welcome back for another adventure. Today, I want to talk about circular saws. One of the first things that you're going to buy as a new woodworker is a circular saw. It's versatile, it's relatively inexpensive, and hey, it cuts wood and it's a whole lot better than a handsaw. But there's four major types of circular saws, and I don't know how you are, but when I started, I didn't know what to buy. So I bought the most common one. It was on the shelf, and it's called a D-Style. Now, the one I bought originally was a super cheap Black & Decker, and I admit it worked really well. I cut a lot of wood with that saw and finally wore it out. And then I bought one of these. Found it at a pawn shop. Back then, in the early 90s, these saws were $100. And I think I paid $30 for that one at the pawn shop. And I used it when I had my framing company, and used it and used it and used it and never wore it out. And when I sold my company, sold all my tools, my trailer, it went with that bunch of tools. So I was wandering pawn shops and I found this one. And wasn't in quite as good a shape when I found it, but I paid $7 for this thing. So moral of that story is, hunt the pawn shops, look for good tools. They're hard to find because most of the stuff in the pawn shops is pretty bad. But this saw today is $150. It's a great, great saw. It'll do pretty much anything. You can build a track for it and do straight cuts, depth adjustment, plenty of power, corded, so you never have to worry about batteries running out. Very, very versatile saw, and I love these saws. But this may not be the best one for you in your workshop. So let's look at some other ones. Here's the next one, and this is same basic thing, smaller blade, but it's battery operated. Now, the thing I hate about this is it's battery operated. When I get to cutting, I wear batteries out quick, and chargers can't seem to keep up. I prefer corded tools. I'm always in reach of an outlet, so I really don't need battery saws. But I got this one in a kit of Porter Cable tools that I bought, so I keep it around. It's handy if I need to make one cut. Cut a 2x4, cut a 2x6, little bitty stuff. I also like it because the blade is on the left instead of the right. And we'll get into that in just a little bit, so stick around. I think I'll set these up here. There's that one. There's that one with the blade on the opposite side. One disadvantage of these is you have to look over to see the blade. And when I'm cutting, I want to see the line and the blade. I don't trust this notch up here. So then let's go to this piece. This is a worm drive. If you're framing, if you're building houses, building sheds, building shops, this is the saw to have. They have tons and tons of power. The motor is much bigger than the D-Style. It's got a worm drive in here. Again, the blade's on the left, which means you can see your cuts better. The disadvantage of this thing is it's heavy, and because the handle is way out on the back, you've almost got to get your second hand on it to cart this thing around. The one thing I do like about this saw, if you've ever built houses, is you have to trim the ends of the trusses. And when you're doing what we call plumb cut, where the fascia board is going to be plumb and straight to the ground, you can pop a line on the top of the truss, walk the wall, and you literally start this saw and just drop it. and gravity will take this saw straight down to cut those tails. You can cut through multiple sheets of plywood with this thing up to the full depth of the blade with no problems, no binding out, where the D style with smaller motors can't really do that as well. And then last is a track saw. Let me grab a piece of track here. This is my last purchase. This is a 7 1/4 inch Wen. This saw with track runs just a little over $200. I didn't say the Skil, the worm drives will run you $200 and up. This one's about $200. You get track with it. When these first came out, I looked at them. I remember being in a tool store, and they were trying to sell me a Festool for, I don't know, somewhere around $700, $800, and I about had a heart attack. And the guy told me, oh, you get a track saw, you won't need a table saw anymore. And I agree, you can do a whole lot with these things. But to spend that kind of money, I don't think it's worth it. This one, for $200 or a little over, is well worth the money. It's got speed control, it's got depth control, it's got everything the more expensive saws have. And believe it or not, this track is fully compatible with Makita and Festool. Will the saw last as long? Probably not. But I don't use it every day. I use it when I break down sheet goods. That's about all I do with it. But in a shop environment, you can use this thing to cut a 2x4 too, or to rip a 2x4. It's plenty powerful enough for that. It's just as powerful as the Makita. Has the same 7 1/4 inch blade. They do make one with a smaller blade, like the battery-powered quarter cable. I don't know why anybody would buy that one over the bigger blade. But it's versatile. It'll do almost anything. In my opinion, if you're going to be building cabinets, working with sheet goods, furniture, things like that, the track saw is the first saw you can buy. You can even use this thing in place of a joiner to get that short edge perfectly straight. It works. Great tool. But it depends on what you're doing. The all-purpose, throw in the truck, build anything, is the D style saw. Take a step up from the D, go to the worm drive. But if you're doing sheet goods, I'll tell you, you can't beat these track saws. The battery powered, they're okay if you're doing just 1 or 2 cuts. But if you're really going to work a saw for a day, you're going to be waiting on batteries to charge. It just, in my opinion, it just isn't worth it. Buy yourself a corded saw. Let me know in the comments. Tell me what you think. Tell me which saws you have. I've covered the bases. I have all 4. Started with the D, got the Porter cable in a tool kit. Then I bought the track saw. And just recently I was at a tool sale with the Woodworkers Guild of Georgia. And they had this one used on sale. I think I paid $30 for it. And it works great. And it's a Skil, which is a great brand. I had one of these years ago. It was branded as a Sears Craftsman, but it was actually the Skil. The only difference was instead of red handles, it had black handles. Hope you enjoyed this little rundown on saws. I want to keep this short. Please subscribe, hit that like button, and leave me a comment. Tell me what you think. Which is your favorite saw? Did I miss something? Let me know. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you next time.